The next presentation is by Michelle Jeffries on the Land Treatment Explorer tool. Michelle is an ecologist at the U.S. Forest and Rangeland Ecosystem Science Center, the USGS Center, where she works on projects related to restoration ecology and sagebrush ecosystems and reptile distribution modeling. Her portfolio includes the Land Treatment Digital Library and the tool she's going to show us now, the Land Treatment Explorer tool. Thank you for joining us, Michelle.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to show you a publicly available tool today called the Land Treatment Exploration Tool. And I'll just ask that everyone, instead of going to the tool and trying to follow along or anything, that you just focus in on the content that I'm sharing and explore the tool sometime after the call, so you can get the most out of this call today. Let's see, there we go. But I want to start off by letting you know that this is a publicly available tool. Anyone can access the URL. So a lot of the funding and planning was done with collaboration between the USGS and BLM, but any resource manager can glean very useful, important information out of this tool. Even the general public can get some great information out of this tool. I will say with that question that was in the chat that the scope of this tool is mainly focused on the Western US, but several of the data layers are wall-to-wall the US, but we don't go down, into Mexico or up into Canada. So for the demo today, I would like us all to pretend like we are a post-wildfire specialist, and we're going to use a similar area that we were just looking into, thinking about those future climate scenarios. So the area that I pulled up to demo today, so here's Boise over here where I sit and where the in-person class is going to be in May. And if we just follow the interstate down, there's this area right here where we have a wildlife refuge and Craters of the Moon National Monument. And I'm going to propose this hypothetical fire that happens. So I digitized this pretend fire boundary, but we can see we have a couple of different stakeholders that might be interested in using the Land Treatment Exploration tool to get an understanding of this area. So we have the Minidoka National Wildlife Refuge, we have Bureau of Land Management here in the middle, and then we have Craters of the Moon National Monument up here. So the Land Treatment Exploration tool is an interactive web application for you to understand the ecological context in that area, identify special status species according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, gather information about past and future drought conditions, identify and learn from past treatments, create maps, summaries, and reports, and here's how we use it. So this is what it looks like over here. So we have some tabs at the top for information. Right now we're in the Start Planning tab. And over on the left, we have 6 steps that we're going to work through today in this demo. So you can see for this example, I've just typed in the name of this area. It's a post-wildfire hypothetical treatment with these proposed actions, and then a file name, essentially. And then this main portion here is where we're going to see a lot of maps and figures and summaries. A lot of information is going to be displayed in that main portion. Step 2 of the tool allows you to either create a polygon, so you can create a polygon 3 different ways, or you can upload a zipped shapefile. So I drew this polygon in here initially, saved it as a shapefile, and then if you need to run it through again or send it to a colleague, you can upload that shape that you created in the tool itself. So the rest of the presentation is actually going to be video clips that show live action going on with the website. And this first clip is going to show us the first part of step 3, which we're going to learn about some treatment history, wildfire history, vegetation history through both, well, in this case, it's going to be from satellite imagery going back into the 80s. We we have some climate information, and we have some drought information. Okay, so this is going to play here in a minute, but to acquaint ourselves, we're essentially in that main middle portion of the tool. And step 3 toggles us over to this tab called Site History, where all this information is going to be displayed for you. So the top part here is going to show treatment history, and it shows that in a couple different ways. The first way is to display these two side-by-side maps that show treatment frequency, so how many times has a past investment occurred, and then the type of investment. We also have an annotation box, and we have links to a database of information about those treatments, and I took notes by going to those links and reading about these different treatments that occur within that fire polygon that I drew. So these overlap with that on-the-fly polygon. And then I got this information by clicking these links and getting into the land treatment digital library. So if I scroll down a little bit further, we're going to get into wildfire history. And this map is showing you wildfire frequency. So how many times has this area had a record of fire? So this might give you an understanding of the types of disturbance that is happening in that area. You can also look at when those fires have been happening. So when was the first fire? When was the most recent fire? And you can take notes on those fires as well by looking at this figure as well as the fire polygons themselves. So you can take notes on that. The next section here shows us some vegetation data. So this is annual cover data of remotely sensed vegetation modeled from Landsat. So they take Landsat imagery with a bunch of ground data to train models, and they output essentially this gridded product for these functional groups of cover. So this top line here is total herbaceous cover for that polygon that I drew on the fly. And so you can hover over it to get values. You can toggle things on and off, and it'll change the view, the y-axis essentially. And then this figure here is showing some recent past climate derived from PRISM. And what it's showing are monthly values of the average precipitation, and then min, mean, and max temperature. So this figure could be helpful if you're thinking about certain species and maybe some thresholds that those species might have. And you might think about timing of when it might be useful, maybe not to seed in August, but maybe October, you surpass that precipitation threshold. And then if we scroll a bit further down, we get some information about drought. So this is one of many drought indices. And then at the bottom, we have these links. There's a lot of wonderful drought information out there, and we just link right to them. And, oh no, let's see, here we are. And so you can link right to these different products, and from those, you can learn information and take notes. And you can also paste in images derived from some of those links. So these two figures here, I created with the Drought Index portal, which is an awesome tool that creates these nice time series plots of drought information at a given location. So this is showing the past drought conditions for our shapefile that we uploaded. All right, the next part of the tool is going to show us on the ground data itself. So a lot of that was derived data. And so we're going to see BLM hosted monitoring data, and this includes terrestrial AIM, landscape monitoring framework, which is essentially NRI, if you're familiar with that data set, as well as aquatic AIM. And soon we're also going to be adding in wetlands AIM as well. So this takes us to the monitoring tab here. And the top part, we have a map that shows our fire polygon, a boundary around it, and it's interactive. You can see all the attributes of each point. And if you scroll down a little bit, it'll show you the points themselves and some of the attributes that are helpful. So some of these are like the core indicators that you might be familiar with. And so you can see at that location in 2020, these were some of the summaries of the landing point intercept data. And then we also even have some species here So you can see what species were present there in these different time periods. And these species codes are also hyperlinked. So you can click on this and it'll take you to USDA plants database. So if you weren't familiar with one of those plant codes, you can just click that and it'll take you right over to it. The next part, I just started over, let me advance, there we go, is we're going to take a look at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Information for Planning and Consultation tool. Some of you might already use this application. So we link directly with it with an API. And essentially, it's going to give us information on special status species in the area, any migratory birds of conservation concern, and also they display wetlands in the area. So now we're here on the IPAC tab, and we are pulling in information directly from their API for that on-the-fly polygon. So the first part here shows those special status species. So in this area, we might have the yellow-billed cuckoo, also might have habitat for monarch butterfly. These are migratory birds. And then if we zoom in, we can also see we have some little wetland ponds that we might have to think about for this area. And then all these hyperlinks can be really helpful. So if you don't know much about the yellow-billed cuckoo, you can click on that link and it'll take you right to the IPAC or the Fish and Wildlife site for that species. And they have all the documentation, listing decisions, the mapping, all kind of in one place so that you can learn everything you might need to learn about that species itself. And then if you need the full IPAC report for NEPA or something like that, that link already loads your polygon. So you can click that link. Here's that fire polygon that I drew on the fly. And then you have the full application here if you need to log in and create like the full IPAC report, for example. All right, the next part is going to allow us to view and interact with over 70 different data layers. So we have all kinds of different data. I'm only going to show you like one or two today, but there's different groupings of data that, depending on what you're interested in, might be relevant for your work. So we were on this plan treatment tab. Now we're on this layers legend, and we're looking back at that main map, which is where we started and how we delineated our boundary. And here are those different groupings. So these are nested groupings here, and we can go through and expand these different groupings to turn on different types of layers. So I just wanted to show you there are lots of treatment data layers, for example, and in the ecological classifications groupings, we have a lot of great information. So, of course, fish and wildlife critical habitat is listed in here. We also have a lot of seed zone information. So, for example, here are a map of sagebrush seed zones. So we've been talking a lot about, getting into that topic of seed and trying to match locations for seed. This is a starting point of starting with this seed zone for a specific species, perhaps. And we also have, so there's sagebrush, but we also have for these other few species here that are available. So for sagebrush, there was only one seed zone for sagebrush in our polygon. But if you look at Sandberg's bluegrass, there are several different seed zones that occur in our fire polygon. So, where you're sourcing seed matters for different species. Okay. The next part of the tool, we're going to take a look at a short-term drought forecast. So this is going to give us some information on the past 6 months and also the future 12 months. And we're going to get information on soil moisture, air temperature, and precipitation. And we're also going to get a few estimates of potential sagebrush seeding germination establishment. So now we're on this drought forecast tab, and here's our polygon. And currently this is a point-based model. So it has your point here, and I'm going to click calculate. And I clipped out the wait time on this, so it happens incredibly fast. Normally it takes a couple minutes. So if you scroll down here, we're going to get information on the past 6 months and the future 12 months for these variables. And this is showing you those past 6 months. So this is derived data from observation, but it's still modeled. And so this is what was observed. The black line is showing you the average conditions for that location and the variability around that. And then here's the day I ran the tool. And then here's the future 12 months for volumetric water content, this top variable. And you can also look at soil moisture at 3 different depths, so shallow, intermediate, or deep soil. And that might matter if you're thinking about already rooted species that have roots all the way down deep, or if you're trying to get a little seedling established that can only access that shallow soil depth. So the top figure is showing what was observed, and this bottom figure is going to show you the deviation from that black line. So the difference, so the deviation from normal. And you can see that there was a pretty high soil moisture period recently this winter above what's typically observed, and it's going to remain above soil moisture for different portions of the next year. And then we have those same figures for air temperature. It's going to be warmer for a portion of the next year, a little bit cooler in the early spring. Precipitation, as Steph pointed out, as well as Climate Toolbox in there, there's a lot of variability around precipitation, and it's often correlated with soil moisture, but they are not equivalent. So you can see there's a little less predictive capability looking into the future for precipitation. And then at the bottom here, we have a few metrics of sagebrush seeding establishment success. So these are taken from recent studies. There are 3 different ones. I'm just going to pause on this first one and not go into the others. But essentially, we took recent publications, used the models that they came up with, and applied those models to that location. So that fire under these conditions, looking past 6 months and future 12 months, what might the probability of sagebrush establishment be given what this paper found? And essentially for this location in 2024, there's a 60% chance that the probability of establishment was above what it typically is for that area. So it's a pretty average year, you could say, at this location for 2024 for this recent time period. These models will also give a prediction for 2025 when there's enough data available. So starting in June, there will start to be a prediction for 2025 as well. And these are using largely the NOAA long lead forecasts, if you're familiar with those. All right, next we're going to calculate some on-the-fly statistics. So for that user-drawn area, there are a suite of variables that we can create statistics for our user-drawn area. So you can draw and look at over 70 data layers, but we have about 27 different layers that you can actually calculate some summary statistics for. So I just looked at them all in this example, and it's going to very quickly calculate. You can already see some popping in here, the data as we go. And so you can get an idea of what type of data, some sage grouse layers, land fire data, heat load, ruggedness, site name, fire history, fire probability, seed zones, allotments, sagebrush conservation design, threat-based ecostates, and some remote sensing data as well. This is similar to that line plot, but it's essentially the last year of that line plot in more detail, the variability around that average essentially. Okay, so the last part of the tool is going to allow you to look to the past to try to understand what might be some options that might work for you looking forward. And so we're going to search the Land Treatment Digital Library, which is a database of BLM treatments, to try to identify some information about what's been done. So we're going to start it off by selecting some area of interest. And in the main map now, I have on the Land Treatment Digital Library polygons turned on. So you can kind of get an idea of the scope of treatments that we're going to be pulling information from. Here's our fire polygon right here. And so I chose the level 3 ecoregion as my query area. And then the next thing I do here after defining the area of interest is I have some options to select some similarity metrics. So for each of these returned polygons, we can compare a pairwise comparison for the average climate, the heat load conditions, and the landform conditions for each one of these polygons to our fire polygon that we drew on the fly. So when I select these options, it does add a few minutes of calculation. So I did speed it up here in this video a little bit. And here we are at our results. And we can see we have over 3,000 returned past treatments that we can identify, what worked, what didn't work under, what's the most similar by climate. You can see that just because something is similar climate does not mean it has a similar heat load or a similar landform. So you can kind of look at these rankings of similarity to try to find, some areas that are fairly similar, might have some inference to your current location. And so 3,000 is a lot to think about, but we do allow filtering that you can reduce this list down. And so if we go over to these filters over here, we have lots of different options to look at this list. So if you know a specific project, you can filter by the project. If you're thinking about seeding a certain seeded species, like for example, sagebrush, I'm going to speed this up here in a minute, but I'm going to select the relevant sagebrush species here that have been seeded in this area. So it's going to go really fast. Don't get dizzy. And that's going to take us down from 3,000 to 400. So 434 of those seeded sagebrush in this ecoregion. And I can also filter it down to those sagebrush seedings that wrote something after the fact about that treatment. So let's take a look at what one of these might look like. We get some basic information about, what field office, what type of treatment were they doing, when did they do it, what time of year. This could be helpful for understanding when it might be a good idea for the current project. We can see, what they actually did, and then some summary of what happened after the fact. And in addition to what was written down, we also calculate that remote sensing data for this past aerial seeding. So what this is showing you is a very similar figure to what we were seeing for on the fly polygon, but we also have water year precipitation as these bars. We have years of fire as dashed red lines, and years of other treatment as dashed black lines, which there's one behind this red line. And then this solid black line is the year of this aerial seeding. So it happened in 2000. And you can look at the change in these different functional groups through time. And you can think about, if I'm standing at this aerial seeding today and the sagebrush cover is 10%, how long did it take to get there after a sagebrush seeding? Or what did bare ground or what did annual herbaceous grass do after this type of treatment? And that can help you get some more context for what the landscape looks like today. And so for each one of these, you can glean this information, and maybe this treatment is like, man, this looked like it worked. They used this seed species with this rate of information. I want to do this. I want to do just like this again. And perhaps you want to include this in your report. So you check this box and it's going to include in your report. And I just also wanted to show you that if you want to know where this one was, you can click that other little icon. It'll show you where it is. And it's actually not very far away from our planned, our pretend wildfire right here. It's just right over there. So what happens at the end of all this? You get a report. So here's a site characterization report, just briefly showing you a few pages of it. It essentially puts all that information together in a PDF. So the main page just shows you the polygon. And then we have, if you took any notes, it pulls in your notes. You have all your different summary sections. So here's just an example of what that'll look like in the report. And then, of course, if you attached any of those treatments, here is your treatment attached as justification for, asking for money to do another sagebrush seeding in this area, for example. And we have tons of resources to help you. So we have a very detailed user guide. If you just click this button here in the tool, it'll take you to this nice user guide. We also have a landing page where we, have like news releases and our contact information. And in that landing page, we also have tutorial videos in the multimedia section. So if you like to watch and listen, you can also watch tutorial videos on how to use the tool. And I'll wrap it up here. Just tons of people have contributed to this work, and somehow we've done this with essentially 2 developers, which is amazing. Lots of thanks to all of these people. And I will finish there with these QR codes. This goes to the landing page, and this takes you to a case study example of the tool.